All praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and peace to you in the name of his Son. I kind of truly blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to preach, and never do it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's topic. It is Easter. Easter. You know, everybody's up. You know, they are, peace to you, Brother Isaiah. They are disappointed because they cannot celebrate Easter as they would going into the church, and there are stories here and there of ministers saying, well, we have an Easter service anyway, and you know, making a ruckus as if they're fighting for something that is of value. Let's go to Matthew, the 15th chapter, because the Messiah says something about how you have to worship, or how people. Oh, peace to you, Brother Willie. Oh, peace to you. Peace to everybody that's listening. And during the feast that he actually put forth, nobody practically is dealing with that, but claim to be a believer in him. This is Matthew the 15th chapter, and verse 8. It says, peace to you, Brother Marcus. It says, verse 7, excuse me. He said, ye hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, Isaiah says Isaiah. He said, this people draw nigh unto me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching the doctrines, the commandments of men. So when you look at, peace to you, sister. So when you look at the worship that's going on this day, that people are up in arms, they can't do, it's not actually based on Torah. It's not based on what he gave. Okay, it's a pagan religion, a religious practice, I should say. Let's go to this book. Actually, I'm gonna read this. This book I wrote, Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays, just to deal with why I say it's pagan. This is on page 32 under this chapter entitled Easter or Ishtar. It reads on page 32, Easter is perhaps the most prominent festival in the Christian religion. It is a movable feast that occurs on the Sunday after the vernal equinox. According to Christian tradition, Easter Sunday is the festival that commemorates the resurrection of Christ on the third day. However, as has already been mentioned in the previous chapter 1, Sunday, day of the S-U-N, not the S-O-N, Christ could not have possibly been crucified on Friday and resurrected on Sunday. And I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to skip down up on page 33. Because now Easter, the word Easter, we understand is found in the Bible. You find it in Acts 12, and I explain that in this book as well. But when you look at the Greek word, that word is Pascha, which means Passover. Okay, so when read in context, it becomes clear that Luke is not referencing the time of Easter as Christian tradition proclaims, but Passover. And understand, Passover and Easter are not synonymous. Okay, let's go to this. This is page 33. Sexual rituals in honor of Ishtar or Easter. Let's see. Actually, let me read a little bit further up above. It says, Passover is the day of preparation for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The word Easter actually comes from the Anglo-Saxon goddess Estra. She is identified with the Babylonian fertility goddess Ishtar. Sexual rituals in honor of Ishtar. In Babylon, like many other ancient pagan cultures, all praise to the Most High, brother. I appreciate you, person in the book and supporting and using it. In Babylon, like many other ancient pagan cultures, human sexuality was associated with fertility in nature. Temples were erected in Ishtar's honor, and sexual ritualism was associated with the worship of her. Some scholars attest that each year around the time of the spring equinox, the marriage of Ishtar and her consort Tammuz was reenacted. This ceremony consisted of a sexual ritual between the king of Babylon and the high priestess of Babylon. It was believed that this union would ensure plentiful crops. Sacred prostitution was also practiced in honor of Ishtar. Herodotus, who was the Greek so-called father of history, Herodotus describes this lascivious act as follows. The foulest Babylonian custom is that which compels every woman of the land to sit in the temple of Aphrodite. or Ishtar and have intercourse with some stranger once in her life. Many women who are rich and proud and disdain to mingle with the rest drive to the temple in covered carriages drawn by teams and stand there with a great retinue of attendants. But most sit down in the sacred plot of Aphrodite with crowns of cord on their heads. There is a great multitude of women coming and going. Passages marked by line run every way through the crowd, by which the men pass and make their choice. Once a woman has taken her place there, she does not go away to her home before some stranger has cast money into her lap and had intercourse with her outside the temple. But while he casts the money, he must say, I invite you in the name of my leader. It does not matter what sum the money is, the woman will never refuse, for that would be a sin, the money being by this act made sacred. So she follows the first man who cast it and rejects no one. After their intercourse, having discharged her sacred duty to the goddess, she goes away to her home, and thereafter there is no bribe, however great, that will get her. So then the women that are fair and tall are soon free to depart, but the uncomely have long to wait because they cannot fulfill the law. For some of them remain for 3 years or 4. There is a custom like this in some parts of Cyprus. They also had homosexual male prostitutes in the honor of Ishtar. Intermingle on page 35, intermingle symbols and practices of pagan worship, Easter eggs. And you have to think about it. Where do Easter eggs come from? Why are you dealing with Easter eggs? Even if you think about it, what an Easter egg hunt is, it's children looking for an egg, like sperm look for an egg in a cycle of reproduction. It's about fertility. You also see rabbit laying eggs. I heard, I was watching some footage of Floyd Mayweather. I watch a lot of boxing, and I was watching Floyd Mayweather in an interview. He was on on a show. This was after one of his fights, and he was hanging with 50, and they driving. He said, hold up. This is years ago. He said, hold up. And 50 like, what? He said, man, you ever thought about the fact that on Easter, man, rabbits don't lay eggs? And 50 was like, they don't? He was like, no. And so they were tripping on that. But yeah, you think about hares that lay rabbits, they don't do that. I mean, that lay eggs, they don't do that. Excuse me. So where does this all come from? Why is the egg significant? Well, again, it's dealing with fertility. In addition to the name, the symbols associated with the Easter festival also revealed its pagan influence. In paganism, the mundane egg is symbolic of the manifestation of the cosmos. The egg is also a symbol of rebirth that is associated with various pagan deities. The ancient Egyptians hung eggs in their temples. Said the Egyptian god of time supposedly laid an egg at the time of the great one of the dual force. In the ancient Greek Orphic tradition, the primordial hermaphroditic god hatched from an egg and then created the deity. Among the Phoenicians, the Agothediamon embraced the mundane egg. The Chinese believed that when the earth was in total darkness, that Pun Ku Wong sprang from an enormous egg as a human being with tremendous powers. According to one Babylonian legend, an egg containing Ishtar fell from heaven and landed in the Euphrates River. This cosmic egg of wondrous size was pushed to shore by fish and incubated by a dove. In Babylon, we also find the roots of Easter egg hunts. Colored eggs were also used in honor of Ishtar. And ancient pagans believed that finding Ishtar's egg in nature at the time of her rebirth would bring forth a blessing. In ancient Anglo-Saxon mythology, the fertility goddess Istara changed her bird into an egg-laying hare. These brightly colored eggs were given as gifts to children. After the rise of Christianity, the egg became a symbol of the tomb from which Christ was resurrected. We're going to talk about the resurrection also. And Christians continued the pagan custom of painting eggs during the festival of Easter. So they just continued pagan customs that they had been doing. Here's another one. Here's a picture of an Orphic egg. All right. Hares, or we know as rabbits. In paganism, a rabbit is a sign of sexual fertility, fecundity, and the moon. A rabbit or hare has 4 to 8 litters each year. During its lifespan, a rabbit can potentially produce up to 600 offspring. That's why they choose rabbits. Again, they choose animals that are very fertile. It was believed that hares had sex indiscriminately and were thus associated with the fertility goddesses in whose honor sexually wanton acts were committed. Rabbits were mainly associated with Astara and Aphrodite. Peace to you, Sister Noel. They were sacrificed on the altars, and even the consumption of rabbit meat was believed to remedy infertility well into the 17th century. They would even, I referenced the lady's companion, or the English midwife. It's an excerpt from a 1671 publication that talked about mixing the slime or well, I'll just read it. Take of the slime that a hare will have about his mouth when he eateth mallows, and drink it in wine 2 hours after alive with their husband, or give to the woman without her knowledge the womb of a hare to eat, or burn the same to powder and give it to her in wine. They believe that that will bring forth fertility. All right. So these are just examples. I'll give you another example. Easter hams. I'm just skipping around a little bit. Easter hams. It is tradition. Many of us grew up in households where they had that Easter ham, right? Well, it is tradition among many Christians to eat ham on Easter. This custom may in fact have derived from Babylon. According to legend, Tammuz was killed by a wild boar on a hunting expedition, and Ishtar descended into the underworld to rescue him. In her absence, he died along with most vegetation. Each year, a pig was consumed by the devotees of Ishtar and Tammuz to avenge the death of their sun god. This really is a day about renewal in nature, okay? But now let's go to Matthew. But as we read, but in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Let's go to, because one thing about it, you can't, actually, let's go to John, the 4th chapter. Because the question is, actually, let's pick up Matthew 12th chapter, excuse me. What does Jesus have to do with all of this? And the answer is nothing. This has nothing to do with the Mashiach, the Messiah. It has nothing to do with Torah. What this has to do with was pagan origins. And one way you know this is because I said I would refer back to the resurrection. The idea behind Sunday or Easter Sunday is that the Messiah rose on Easter Sunday. But that's not the case. Matthew the 12th chapter and verse 38. Because the story is that you hear in Christianity is that he died Good Friday and rose Easter Sunday. Well, that's not possible. Matthew the 12th chapter and verse 38. Because the sign that he gave that he was the Messiah was not that he was in the grave from Friday to Sunday. Let's read it. Matthew 12 and 38. Then certain of the scribes and of the Pharisees answered, saying, Master, we would see a sign from thee. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. So how long was the Messiah in the grave? 3 days and 3 nights. And we all know, or should know, that you cannot get 3 days and 3 nights from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. Okay? It's just not possible. So from Good Friday to Easter Sunday is 1 day and 2 nights. So you got Good Friday, which is the night. You have Saturday day, Saturday night, and then he rose early Sunday morning, according to that tradition. But that is false. Rather, what day did he die on? What day should we be commemorating? Let's go to Matthew the 26th chapter and verse 1. It says, and it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said unto his disciples, you know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. He is our Passover lamb, not our Easter bunny. He is so, and we just read he had to be in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. Let's see what happened when Mary came unto the sepulchre. Matthew the 28th chapter and verse 1. It says, in the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, so we're talking about the weekly Sabbath, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And what happened? They wasn't there. He wasn't there. The angel told her, verse 5, and the angel answered and said unto the women, fear not, ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen. As he said, come see the place where the Lord lay. So he arose. But wait a minute. So they go early. It's and when you read it, it says Sabbaton. And when you see the instances of Mary coming back to see to the sepulchre, or coming to the sepulchre, I should say, that first day of the week. So what does that mean? He rose on the Sabbath, but he was in. So he went in on and he had to be there for 3 days and 3 nights. So that meant he went in on a Wednesday. So that would be Wednesday night, Thursday day, Thursday night, Friday day, Friday night, Saturday day. 3 days and 3 nights. That's how you get it. You can't use this to justify Sunday worship because he didn't rise on Sunday. See, that kills all of that. And if he did, why is Paul still observing the Sabbath after his resurrection? You can't justify Sunday worship. Even when you say he rose that day, even if he did, which he did not, that doesn't mean that Sunday worship is the day in which you're supposed to hold a holy convocation. But they use that. They use the idea that he rose on a Sunday to say that. But it's the day of the sun, a day in which they have been venerated, and it is the total opposite. He told you to honor the seventh day, not the first day. Let's go to John, the 4th chapter. Because the question is, can you worship him any way you want to? And the answer, brothers and sisters, is no. Peace to you, Brother Joseph. It's good to see you there, brother. Hope you're doing well. John, the 4th chapter and verse 22. So he says something. He said, ye worship, you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Now, he's talking to the Samaritan woman. What does he mean salvation is of the Jews? Does he mean you have to be a Jew to be saved? No. He's telling you that you have to deal with what was given to Israel. There's always been a commonwealth in Israel. Other people of other nations can be saved. That's not the issue. The question is, who wants salvation? Who's willing to do what's necessary to obtain it? Peace to you. So not Disney 911. So this is I want to read something here because we want to find out what was given to Israel, because he says salvation is of the Jews. If you read earlier, the woman at the well, she said she was a Samaritan, but she said our fathers worshipped in this mountain. That's what I said. He worshiped, you know not what. She was a remnant of those who have been placed there seemingly by the Assyrians. Okay, who were not Israelites, but nevertheless, this is Romans the 3rd chapter, and Paul says something concerning what was given to Israel. He said, "What advantage didn't have the Jew? What profit is their circumcision? Much every way chiefly, because that unto them were committed the oracles of God." So he manifested himself unto one people. Okay, he didn't give it to all these other nations. And if the other nations, people of other nations, want to take hold of that covenant, they can. So that's why I say ye worship, you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. Okay, that's what was given to Israel: the laws, the statutes, the commandments. All that was given unto this particular people. But now the question is, can you worship him any type of way? This is verse 23. He said, but the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. He says in verse 24, God is a spirit. Okay, he's not your father, he's not your mother, he's not your best friend, he's not your uncle, he's not your husband, he's not your wife. It said God is a spirit. We talking about creator of all, the one who gave us a standard by which to live, who gave us a standard by which to worship him. God is a spirit. Then he goes on to say, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Again, you cannot worship him according to a lie. He didn't die Good Friday and rise Easter Sunday. That was just proven. But the problem is that many people would rather deal with a lie. But the truth is, you dealing in paganism. And in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Man came up with that. But a lamb slain from the foundation of the world to set up the Passover, then come to die on the Passover. And showing and through your life, showing and death, showing what the Passover pointed to. That's what he did. He said, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So real quick, let's find out what truth is. We should know it. John the 17th chapter. John 17:17. Prior to his passion, he made this intercessory prayer to the Father. The Messiah says, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. So his word is true. So the question is, if that's the truth, brothers and sisters, let's see something else. Psalms 119. Psalms 119, and we're going to pick it up at 151. He says, thou art near, O Lord, and all thy commandments are true. Psalms 42, he says, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. The laws, the commandments, the word is the truth. The question is, do you find that you're supposed to deal with Easter? But what should we be dealing with? No, you don't find that. But what should we be dealing with? Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. During this very time, Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, here we find the feast days that we are commanded to observe, and we will not read Easter. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and verse 1. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses. So these are not the Mosaic laws or Mosaic feast days or feast of the Jews. They were given to them by the Most High. He said, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations or holy gatherings. Even these are my feasts. So what did he start off with? 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest. And holy convocation, you shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. So he starts off with a weekly Sabbath. Then he says, these are the feasts of the Lord, which even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. Then you have the annual Sabbath. What is he, or feast? What does he point to? Or what did he start off with? In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. Okay? So he starts off with the Passover. Now, real quick, let's just find out something about the Messiah. Because like I said, he's not our Easter bunny. This is 1 Peter 1 and verse 18. He said, because we're going to find out what he is. He said, for as much as you know that he would not redeem with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers. You were not redeemed with the gods of silver and gold. He said, but with the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. That Passover lamb had to be perfect. It couldn't be anything wrong with it. Just like him, he was without sin. Then they said, who was verily foreordained from before the foundation of the world, who was manifest in these last times for you. So he was a lamb. Okay, he's our Passover lamb. 1 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. In verse 7, just getting to it, he says, purge out therefore the old leaven, right? So get rid of sin, get rid of malice, get rid of wickedness. He said, as ye are unleavened, for even Christ our Passover is sacrificed with us. For us. He is our Passover. Again, he is not our Easter bunny. Throw that mess in the trash. It would have been good if people stayed home today that were keeping that nonsense, reflecting on, man, should I be keeping that? Because that's one day Christians will go. They ain't been to church in 51 Sundays, but they'll go on Easter Sunday. He says, purge out therefore the old leaven. That's some leaven. That's doctrine. That's false doctrine that people are dealing with. He said, purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a lump as ye are unleavened, for even Christ our Passover sacrifice for us. And leaven is also this. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with the old leaven, not with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And what is truth? His commandment is the truth. Let's go to Exodus, the 13th chapter. See, we're in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, on the 14th day of the first month, which is right now. We're not talking about the Gregorian calendar. We're talking about his calendar. Is the month of Bee. Right? So that's what he's talking about. Then he says, and on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And he said, keep the feast with sincerity and truth. Right? The bread, unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Let's go to Exodus, the 13th chapter, because that bread that you eat, once you come up under the blood of the Messiah, spiritually speaking, what's supposed to happen? You're supposed to walk out of bondage because you were in bondage to death. You walk out of bondage, and what happens? You walk according to the truth. This is Exodus the 13th chapter and verse 7. So they commanded them to come out. Once they came up under that blood of the lamb and they left bondage, Egyptian bondage, they had to eat unleavened bread. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with thee, neither shall there be leaven seen with thee in all thy quarters. And thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, this is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes. Listen to this, that the Lord's law may be in thy mouth. That his law may be in your mouth. That's what the bread represented. That's the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. We read his law is truth. His commandment is truth. His word is the truth. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. You can't worship him according to a lie and think you're going to be acknowledged, because he said, for in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Leave that mess alone and deal with what he gave. He gave us the truth through his word. We don't have to deal with falsehood and be tossed to and fro anymore with false doctrine. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to imagine we at the House of the Faith meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will be live streaming until further notice only, though. Live streaming again at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. Let's see what else. We have Bible study every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom. So we have the Zoom personal ID number attached to this video. If you'd like to have your questions answered through Bible study, you can do that. It's interactive. We can see you or not see you. We welcome you there. If I found these to be very beneficial. Yeah, so it's been edifying, I believe. With that, also, if you've been edified through the ministry, you can leave a donation on our website, www.israelteach.org. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. Now pockets. Me and my father were talking about that yesterday. After the Sabbath lesson, we were talking about it, how I said, man, we've been able to do with few members, with small congregation, but we've been able to do a lot. We don't have a mortgage on our building or anything like that, because we were able to pay, and we're able to do different things because and make donations to food banks and different things like that, do different things that we can do because we're not taking no money. So and we thought about that, said, yeah, that is right, because so now we're looking to again, when this stuff dies down, to purchase a brand new sign, because the sign that needs to be changed. And signs are not cheap, but you'd be surprised just the signs that they have in these buildings in front of these churches. It's nothing for them to be $5,000. I had no idea signs cost that much until I started researching. So that's what we're in the process of doing now. Hopefully, when things get back to some semblance of normal, we can go ahead with that, because that's the plan for this spring or summer, depending on again how this thing plays out. Also, books are available from when I read from the Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays. Killing Black Innocence. The Program to Control African American Reproduction from Slavery's End to the Present Day Self-Inflicted Genocide. Hair Like Wool, Feet Like Burned Brass. The Color of Jesus and Burning Truths Concerning the Messiah. Then Shall Be Great Tribulation. In Defense of Biblical Polygyny. Multiple Wives. Biblical Argument. And Into Egypt Again with Ships. A message to the forgotten Israelites. And brothers and sisters, yes, I do. I answered that question quite a few times. There are about 1,600 videos on here, and that question has been answered. It don't really take a whole lesson though. It doesn't take a whole lesson. I mean, do you have a question? And I can't. My vision is not the best. I'm having. It said Dreadhead Tay. I think Dreadhead Tay. Did you have a question on it, or did you just? Because there are videos. If you look it up, there's. I deal with it on a few occasions. If you had a question. Okay. Well, if not, let's see. If nothing else, then brothers and sisters, yes, I was just wondering if it was a shame or not. Okay. Yeah, brother had a name. Dreadhead. So our locks are shame. Now, real quick, I'll deal with this real quick. People, yeah, you hear that, and a lot of that is based so much of what we have is based upon Western tradition. Okay, so now you have to think about it. He is something a sin or a shame that he literally, the ones that were dedicated to him, they grew locks. See, just right off the jump, that don't make any sense. When you look at the Nazarite law, this is number 6 chapter, real quick. In verse 1, it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow a vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Lord. So now you're talking about somebody that's separating themselves unto the Lord, right? Now, if they separate themselves to the Lord, they are making a vow unto him. There's certain things that they did. Verse 3, it said, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink, and shall drink no vinegar of wine or vinegar of strong drink, neither shall he drink any liquor of grapes, nor eat moist grapes or dry. Okay, so he's supposed to not deal with that. Then it says, all the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree. All praise to the Most High, brother. All the days of his separation shall he eat nothing that is made of the vine tree, from the kernels even to the husk. Then it says something. All the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head. Okay, until the days be fulfilled, in the which he separated himself unto the Lord, he shall be holy, and shall let the locks of his hair, of the hair of his head grow. Now that's talking. Now, why you got to think about it? What? So if that's the case, if he had something that is separated as Nazarite, not saying that you have to be a Nazarite if you have locks, but why would he have something that's a shame unto you if at the same time it's signifying that that you are basically separated for him? Let's look at another example. This is Samuel 1 and verse 11. Listen to what it says about the one who we call Samuel, who we know is a mighty prophet and a judge in Israel. It says in verse 11, 1 and 11, and she vowed a vow and said, oh Lord, because Hannah, his mother, she hadn't had a child, and his father was married to another woman, and he had 2 wives. It said the name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. So now she's praying. And she says, so it says in verse 9, so Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, because that was the place where they would go at first, and said, after they had drunk, now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord. Then it says, and she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. Why? Because she didn't have a child. Listen what she said. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. So that's the law of the Nazarite. Okay. So now it's not it's not a shame. That's what they had. That's the hairstyle men had. Israelites had. Okay. Let's go to matter of fact, let me show you something real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay, I don't know if you can, let me see if I can make this clear. This is from this book, Hair Like Wool, Feet Like Burned Brass. Okay, now you see the Israelites here. This is a relief, and you see okay, hold on for a second. I'm doing the teaching right now. Hold on for a second. You see they got locks. Okay. So now that's one. So now to say that it's a shame, we're gonna get to that in a second. So now we're seeing archaeological evidence that the Israelites had locks. And then we see that the Nazarites had locks. One mighty judge and priest Samuel had locks because he took the law or had to vow the Nazarite, his mother, from birth. Okay, now let's go to and we know Samuel's righteous. Now let's pick it up in Ezekiel, the 8th chapter. And then we know this a mighty prophet here. It says in verse 3, and he put forth the form of hand and took me by the lock. Now wait a minute. So now it seems like an angel is taking him by a lock of what? His hair. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven and brought me into the business of God to Jerusalem. Now he's got locks. He's got locks. Okay. So now you got the Nazarites having locks. You got one being Samuel, who you know is righteous. Now you got Ezekiel, who is a prophet. He got locks. Now you see archaeological evidence of men that had locks. Let's go to let's see. Just give you one more example. This is in the future, Ezekiel the 44th chapter. He's talking about the priest here. He says, neither shall they shave, in verse 20, neither shall they shave their heads nor suffer their locks to grow long. They shall only pull or trim of the hair, their locks. But they still have them. They ain't letting them grow them. You see, Absalom had locks. You see locks all over. Now, when you're talking about it's a shame unto them, let's go and see what that's written. And that is 1 second, because again, we looking at it through. Oftentimes, people are looking at it things through Western eyes. Now we're in 1 Corinthians 11th chapter. 1 Corinthians the 11th chapter. Yeah, I got it. 1 Corinthians 11th chapter. Thank you. Verse 14. It says, Doth not even nature itself teach you? Let's read up further. Because what he's talking about, people go here and read it out. They don't. They talk about a man can't have long hair, but they don't do anything concerning the hair coverings, which he's talking about the order here in this chapter. Then he says, nevertheless, neither is the man without the woman, neither the woman without the man in the Lord. For as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman, but all things of God. He says, prior to that, neither was the man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. Okay, so he was talking about how women should have their hairs covered and men should have them uncovered. But then he says something. He says, for as the woman is of the man, even so is the man also by the woman, but all things of God. Judge in yourselves, it is comely that a woman pray unto God uncovered. So he asked the question, is it seemly? Then he said, does not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? Okay, so now people stop right there, not considering the context, not considering the audience, not considering the person who's writing the letter. The person who's writing the letter is from a people who look like this, who wore their hair like this. Okay, now let's keep reading. He says, does not even nature itself teach you? He's talking to Corinthians. See, one of the reasons why Paul was a good vessel to use, because he's familiar, he speaks more languages, he's familiar with these cultures, he's familiar with their traditions. He even tells, he's quoting other philosophers in one place that they know of. You think the Hebrews knew about them? So he says, does not even nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him? But if a woman have long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given for her covering. Now, people they only read, it's a shame unto you, and they read it out of context, and don't keep reading. Because if you keep reading, what do we say? What does it say? It said, but if any man seem to be contentious, he said, we have no such custom, neither the churches of God. We don't have that custom. It might teach you that you might have that Caesar. It's just like when you go on a job today. I remember my mother saying something to me when I first got a car. You got your hair like you ain't gonna get no job. Why? Because it's Western culture here in America that, we want you to have short hair. We don't want. My father was in many years in corporate America, and that was not a place where, at that time he wore a beard anyway. And he had a doctor's note because you can't have a beard in corporate America, like not where he was working. So, but the Israelites didn't have that custom back then. Clearly, they didn't have that custom because you saw they had beards, they had locks. That was their hair. So so if people keep reading, they can understand what's being said. He said, as for us, we have no such custom. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, I'm going to say this. It is always my prayer that you were edified.